I'm studying a Gemara in Masechet Moed Katan Daf He Amud Aleph. I'm not teaching the sugya here. I'm not even teaching part of the sugya. I want to read a baraita. I want to show something about the methodology that the Gemara uses. I think it's important. I'm going to read to you the baraita. It's on the top of the Amud. So it says, Vehatanya. The question that is being dealt with is what's allowed on Chol Moued and what's not allowed on Chol Moued. And so we have Sorche Rabbim is one of the things, one of the terms that you're allowed to do Melacha on Chol Moued is when it's Sorche Rabbim. So the Mishnah says, Umtakenin et kilkulei hamayim shebershut Rabbim v'chotetin otan. So there's a baraita, and again, I'm not teaching the whole sugya or even the mahalach. I just want to make a point here. I think it's an important point. So here's the baraita. Vehatanya chotetin borot shechin umarot shel yachid ve'en tzarich lomar shel rabbim. So it's permissible to be chotet, like if there's in the plumbing, sometimes there's a stoppage, right? A clog, right? So you can remove the clog from the borot, the shechin, the me'arot shel yachid. If it's for a yachid, even though it's not sorche rabbim, it's allowed because it's sorech Yom Tob. They need to drink on Yom Tob, so or use the water on Yom Tob, right? Ve'en tzarich lomar shel rabbim, and of course it's allowed to remove a clog for the plumbing of reshut harabim. I'm using the word plumbing. It was borot. It could have been cisterns. It could have been wells. Okay, but I'm not going to. My purpose here again is not to teach the sugya, but reading the baraita. But in the case of hafira, to actually dig the hole, so you have to dig. Let's say you need to dig it to make it deeper. Maybe there's extra rain and you need to dig extra deep to collect more rainwater. That's haram. Even in Reshut Rabbim, even though it's Sorche Rabbim, not Reshut Rabbim, Sorche Rabbim, water of Rabbim, right? And of course, if it's Shel Yachid. So again, the Baraita draws a distinction between Chatita, removing a clogged drain, which is mutar, both in Yachid and in Rabbim, and digging, which is asur both in Yachid and Rabbim. Now, the sugya continues, and the question the sugya deals with is as follows. When it says mutar, is it for sorech, meaning, is it kishaserichim, when they need it, you need it on the mu'ed, or you don't need it on the mu'ed? Kishayachid sarich lahem, or kisharabim sarichim lahem, right? It could be a situation, for example, where maybe you have a clog, and they don't have to do hatita lesorech hamoed. Maybe you don't need the water now. Maybe the water is for some future usage or something, right? So the question is, when we say hatita, is mutar lesorech hamoed or not lesorech hamoed? In the case of yachid, both in the case of yachid and in the case of rabbim, we have the same question, right? When we say hafila, is asur lesorech or shelo lesorech, both in yachid and rabbim. I'm just giving you an introduction to the ideas. Now I'm skipping down, and I'm going to read to you how the sugya explains the baraita, how the Gemara explains the baraita. So here it is. Taris hachi. You have to be metares in this way. So you use the word taris, like a terus. So he says as follows. So here's the way the baraita is going to be understood by the Gemara. Chotetin borot shel yachid. B'sheyachid tzarich lahem. So when the baraita said, I'm going back to the baraita said, chotetin borot shechun umarot shel yachid. It meant b'sheyachid tzarich lahem. Only if there's sorech hamoed, yachid tzarich lahem. Right? Ve'en tzarich lomar shel rabbim. When the baraita said ve'en tzarich lomar shel rabbim, it meant ve'en tzarich lomar shel rabbim כשרבים צריכים להם. So, כשיחיד צריך להם, או כשרבים צריך להם. That's when hatita is mutar. But then the explanation, the terus continues and says something that is completely not in the baraita. Va'afilu hafila mutar, meaning in the case where tzarichim lahem, even hafila is mutar, right? Not just removing the clog, but digging is mutar. And then it says, then it goes back to the lashon of the baraita. Ve'en chofirin borot shilchin umarot shel rabim, and it adds b'she'en rabim tzarichim lahem. When is it? It's forbidden to dig a hole. We just said it's permissible to dig a hole, shel rabim b'she'tzarichim lahem. But when the baraita says it's forbidden to dig a hole, b'she'en rabim tzarichim lahem, it adds the words b'she'en rabim tzarichim lahem. Ve'zech lomar shel yachid dechi en yachid tzarich lahem afilu chatitana me'asur, because when en tzarichim, when en yachid tzarich lahem, afilu hatita is asur, kol sheken hafila is asur. Okay, that's why it explains the baraita. It's in terms of Aristotelian logic, no, this follows no Aristotelian logic. It's the truth. There's no logic to this explanation, because we don't believe in Aristotelian logic. It's something that's foreign to the Talmud. But I want to say two things. Number one, Tanna darko lekaser, emora darko levaer. It is the ways of the Tannaim that they condense the language. They use super dense language. And the Emoraim, no, generally they don't use. So generally the Tannaim, or sometimes the Tannaim use super dense language. And oftentimes the Emoraim, they're very descriptive in the language, or explicit in the language. Now, that's number one. Principle number two. The Pasuk says in Mishle, Divrei Chachamim v'chidotam. When the Chachamim speak, they sometimes speak in a chidah. This is part of Jewish rhetoric. This is part of Jewish speech. Intelligent people, they sometimes throw out riddles. I know when I was growing up, Ibn Aizam, many times he writes a sentence, a poem, and you have to figure out what he's talking about. You can't figure out what he's talking about. It's a riddle, right? It's very common. I remember growing up, my father used to speak with other Chachamim, and sometimes they'd throw riddles at each other. So one Chacham will say like a prose from a song that he's writing, and my father would explain what the prose meant. I'll give you an example, something more common. Roshemet Bichtav ve'al peh b'Shabbat. In the Azharot for Shabbat, we have Roshemet Bichtav ve'al peh b'Shabbat. What does it talk about Roshemet Bichtav? It's haram to be Roshem on Shabbat. So it means Roshemet Bichtav. So when you write the days, you write Hayom Yom Echad b'Shabbat Kodesh, or Hayom Yom Sheni b'Shabbat Kodesh. So you might write it in the contract. Let's say you're writing a shetar, maybe a ketubah. Hayom Yom Shelishi b'Shabbat Kodesh. That's Shemet, right? And Be'al Peh, of course, is the when you say the tefillah, right? Hashir Shayu Halvim Omnim Al Ducha, right? So it was a riddle, and you had to explain the riddle. So if I had to explain the riddle, I would say Roshemet Shetarot Bichtav right, and then I would kind of explicate. This is part of, so one of the reasons that the Gemara is so foreign to the Western mind is because we don't have this concept of speaking in riddles. It was a rabbinic thing because we were very into textuality and very into linguistics, and we were an alphabetic mind. We're very intrigued by these types of linguistic riddles. The Goyim did not think alphabetically, so these types of riddles were not so interesting to them. Although we do have, why the chicken crossed the road and other things like that, but not very intelligent and not very intellectually stimulating. So you do have that, but in Jewish rabbinic thinking, you have riddles, and that's why Shlomo HaMelech says, Divrei Chachamim v'chidotam. So this beraita is an example of a riddle. That's why it's taris, hachi. Taris means you have to decode the riddle, right? Very important. So when you study Talmud, if you were looking for Aristotelian logic, you won't always find it, right? Now, because I was Meshamesh Talmidei Chachamim, in the sense I was with my father, Hareni Kaparat Mishkavo, I can understand this because I remember the way he used to speak and the way they used to speak to him. And it's going back a long time ago, 40, 50, over 40 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever. I remember as a child, there was still Chachamim from Halab in Damascus, and the way my father used to speak with them was in this way.